Everyone knows that sugars are actually not so sweet when it comes to diabetes. Uncontrolled diabetes causes many problems in every part of the body, and specifically in the eyes can cause a variety of issues, from fluctuations in vision from lens changes to bleeding in the back of the eye that calls for its surgical removal. While there is evidence that certain ethnic groups have a predisposition to type 2 diabetes in the presence of the same risk factors, we also know that diabetes is severely exacerbated by poor diet and insulin control. Thus, populations of lower socioeconomic status that have less access to proper nutrition will have higher rates of obesity, central fat distribution, and resulting insulin resistance. Medications and insulin are likewise expensive, also preventing certain minority groups from proper diabetic control. I actually began my externship rotations with the Indian Health Service System in Montana. Spending 2 months here was a life-changing experience. I saw a lot of end-stage pathology, which was a reflection of the rural and impoverished conditions my patients lived in. The reservation had no franchises, one grocery store with all imported goods, and one hospital. For anything beyond primary optometric care, patients would have to drive sometimes 3.5 hours away. It was within these conditions that I met a patient with severe proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Due to a lack of follow-ups and very poor diabetic control, the patient had to have one eye completely enucleated. This fundus photo is a picture of his other eye, after a couple of years of beginning proper diabetic management. But as you can see, there still is significant proliferative retinopathy. The patient was shocked that his remaining eye was still affected, even after he started to take care of his health. I unfortunately found out that a few days after his appointment with us, he committed suicide. I attended prayer services for him, and during them his sister told me he said he wouldn't want to live if he couldn't see. He overdosed on meth a couple of days after the appointment. Would things have been different if the patient was from a different background? Could affording care earlier or even counseling help? Or if he was more thoroughly educated that neovascularization does not resolve on its own, but rather requires laser treatments or injections on top of systemic control, would that have made a difference? We may never know the answer to those questions, but we do know one thing. The role of an optometrist as a primary care physician is to take care of the patient. By asking for fasting blood sugar, last HbA1c numbers, and writing diabetic follow-up letters to the primary care, and making sure that the patient understands that their eyes will only get better when the blood sugar in your whole body goes down. Optometrists should also be telling the patient that whatever we can see in their blood vessels in their eyes is also happening to the small blood vessels in their kidneys and other parts of the body. And as we mentioned before, the optometrist has the ability to counsel patients about how diabetes affects their eyes and what to expect on what timelines. It's also extremely important to understand your patients on a personal level. If you take an interest in their day-to-day lives, culture, religious traditions, and more, you will be able to be more effective at communicating with them. Effective communication leads to better compliance and follow-ups. I took some time in Montana to educate the hospital medical staff about my cultural background. As part of the presentation, I explained the Islamic month of fasting and how that affects medical treatment, including the treatment of diabetes. Some patients with diabetes may still want to fast, but as their doctor, you should be pre-assessing their health and making sure they know how to monitor if their blood sugar falls below certain levels. It's also important to understand that religious fasting can be skipped and made up if their health is going to be affected. Optometrists can fight back against debilitating diseases with education and treatment, especially with populations that are most at risk. It is the doctor's responsibility to take the extra step so that the patients get more equal access to health care and a better quality of life, no matter what their background.